The rain was blinding. Not the usual summer drizzle that spat and sulked, but an aggressive, sideways storm that turned the road into a ribbon of slick black glass. My windshield wipers fought a losing battle, squealing in rhythm as I navigated the back road shortcut home. That's when I saw her, sitting perfectly still in the middle of the road like a statue carved from mud and shadow. At first, I thought she was roadkill, maybe a deer or something dumped from a truck, but then her head turned slightly, just enough for our eyes to meet through the haze and rain. She didn't flinch, didn't blink, just stared. And for a second, God help me, I felt like she was watching me long before I saw her. I slammed on the brakes. Tires screamed. The car fishtailed slightly before shuddering to a halt a few feet from her. I threw open the door, umbrella forgotten in the passenger seat. Cold needles of water bit into my skin as I stepped out. She didn't move. "Hey, girl." I crouched, my voice already hoarse from a dry throat and raw nerves. "You okay?" Still nothing. Her fur was matted, heavy with grime and water. She was large, maybe a lab mix with a brindle coat that had once been beautiful. Her ribs showed through faintly beneath the muck. She looked like she'd been wandering for days. Weeks, maybe. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the old metal flask I always kept for emergencies. I'd filled it with water after the gas station stop. I unscrewed the cap and poured a small stream into my palm, holding it out to her. "Come on, you need this." She looked at the water, then looked past it, past me. She didn't drink. Instead, she stood up slowly, carefully, like something ancient being woken, and walked past me toward my car. Limping. No bark, no whimper, just the wet shuffle of paws against asphalt. She jumped into the back seat on her own, settled there, head low, body trembling. I should have called animal control. I should have taken her straight to a shelter, but I didn't. Because the way she looked at me when I offered her water, it wasn't fear or hunger or exhaustion. It was warning. I've always believed dogs can see what we can't. My last dog, Daisy, would bark into corners of the room when no one was there. She'd stand at the edge of my bed at night, staring, into the hallway. People said she was just old, that her senses were dulling. But Daisy never barked at nothing. She knew things. She died last year, 14 years old. I held her paw as the vet injected the syringe. She looked at me right before the end. Those warm eyes, always knowing, and I swear she was trying to tell me something then, too. After the divorce, I packed up and moved to the only house I could afford, a rundown craftsman cabin near the tree line, where the woods whispered day and night. Everyone else thought it was cursed. I just needed quiet. No more city noise, no more lawyers, just me and the memories. I thought I'd start over. I bought fresh paint, ripped out carpets, hung old pictures. I even started journaling, trying to reconnect with something, anything that made me feel grounded again. Most nights I sat on the porch with a beer, watching the trees sway, pretending they weren't full of ghosts. Then came the storm. Then came her. She didn't have a tag, no collar, no chip, the vet later said. I dried her off as best I could with an old towel from the trunk. She didn't growl, didn't snap. She just let me. She was trembling, but not from fear. It was something else, like she was resisting something. Inside, she refused the water bowl I left near the kitchen door, refused the scraps I heated up. Chicken, steak, bacon fat. Nothing worked. She lay down by the front door and stayed there. All night, didn't sleep, didn't whine, just watched. The next morning, I woke to find her still staring, her eyes locked, on the mirror in the hallway. Not the hallway itself, the mirror. She growled once, low, almost imperceptible, and then stopped. She didn't bark again for 2 days. I called the local vet, old Dr. Harlow, who'd treated Daisy more times than I could count. He remembered me. said he'd take a look even though his office was closing early for storm damage. The car ride was silent. She lay on the back seat like a shadow, her breathing slow, almost meditative. I spoke to her softly. "You got a name?" "Nothing. I can't keep calling you, 'Hey girl,' forever. Still nothing." Harlow's clinic sat on the edge of the town, tucked between an abandoned feed store and a boarded-up barber shop. The wind had knocked over part of his sign. Only the vet part remained. Inside smelled like antiseptic and cedar, shavings. It was empty, except for a sleepy receptionist who waved us in with a puzzled look. Harlow was waiting in exam room 2, already pulling on gloves. He gave the dog a once-over, checking her heart, ears, joints. "She's dehydrated, starving too, but doesn't want food?" I nodded. "Hasn't touched anything," he frowned. "Might be internal damage. I'll check her teeth, see if she's in pain." She sat there, unmoving, as he gently opened her mouth. Then everything changed. Harlow went stiff. His flashlight dropped from his hand and hit the floor with a clatter. He took one slow step back. "Where did you find this dog?" he whispered, stomach flipped. "Why?" His face was pale. "Just answer me." I hesitated. "On the road, out by Pine Hollow near the old orchard." He didn't blink, didn't move. "I need you to listen to me carefully," he said, voice dry. "Whatever you think this dog is, she's not. You need to take her home. Now. Keep her away from other animals, from people. And whatever you do, don't let her near a mirror." "What the hell are you talking about?" I asked, my voice rising. He swallowed hard. Then, almost too quietly to hear, "She shouldn't be alive." I stood in the clinic parking lot, rain dripping down my collar, staring at the closed door behind which Dr. Harlow had locked himself. He didn't even give me a chance to ask questions. Just ushered me out with trembling hands and that final, whispered warning. "She shouldn't be alive." The dog, still nameless, was already back in the passenger seat when I returned, waiting, watching. Her eyes never blinked. As I pulled out of the lot and headed home, my hands trembled against the wheel. I didn't sleep that night. She didn't either. She paced the floorboards, soft padded footsteps circling the living room, in endless loops. Around midnight she stopped and sat in front of the basement door. Just sat there. Then she lifted a paw and scratched once, slowly, deliberately. The sound echoed like nails on bone. I didn't open it. Couldn't. Instead, I sat with my back against the opposite wall, gripping a flashlight and staring into her eyes for what felt like hours. The next morning, I went down there. Against every screaming instinct, I unlatched the old lock and descended into the dusty basement. It was darker than it should have been, like the light avoided it. There were old boxes, tools, Christmas junk, newspapers yellowed beyond recognition, but nothing stood out. Until I found the photo. It was wedged behind a stack of cracked ceramic pots, inside a warped picture frame half covered in mold. A man stood on the porch of my house, same steps, same railing. Even the crack in the third slat was identical. He wore suspenders, a pressed shirt, and a proud expression, standing beside him, leaning against his leg. The dog. Same brindle coat, same eyes. Only this photo was dated 2016. 9 years ago, that didn't make sense. She would have been a puppy. Then, maybe 2. The dog in the photo was fully grown, mature, big. I flipped the photo over, scribbled in shaky pen. Martin Lowe and Harlow's girl. Summer before the storm. I froze. Harlow's girl, the name echoed in my skull. I knew Harlow had lived here long ago before opening the clinic. The town was small, histories overlapped, but that meant the dog had been here before. I took the photo upstairs and opened my laptop, digging into the town's archived newspaper site. A few clicks, a few misspelled search attempts, then I found it. Local man. Found mauled in own home. No animal identified. The article was dated September 2016. Martin Lowe, same name as on the photo, dead, found in the basement, torn open as if by wild claws. No signs of forced. Entry: no animal prints in the mud outside, just internal disturbance. The sheriff at the time described it as inconclusive. Locals whispered other words. I looked down at the dog sleeping near the fireplace. She'd finally stopped pacing. 3 days later, a volunteer from the local shelter came by. A young woman named Tessa, tall and no-nonsense, holding a leash in one hand and a clipboard in the other. She smiled politely when I answered the door. "Heard you took in a stray. Want me to take her off your hands?" I stepped aside to let her in, and that's when the dog appeared. At first, she said nothing. No growl, no bark. But the moment Tessa stepped over the threshold, something inside the dog snapped. She lunged, not biting, but standing tall, fur bristling, snarling with such primal fury I barely had time to grab her collar. Whoa, whoa, she's not usually... Tessa had frozen in place, eyes locked on the dog. Her voice trembled. "That's not a stray," she whispered. I stopped pulling. "What?" She backed away, clipboard falling to the ground. "That's a return." What the hell does that mean? But she was already halfway to her car. She didn't say goodbye, just drove off, tires spitting gravel into the air. That night, I double-locked every door, every window. The dog refused to leave the living room, choosing to sit beside the cold fireplace instead. Around 2 a.m., I heard growling again. But it wasn't coming from her. It was coming from inside the walls. I sat upright in bed, heart pounding so hard it shook the bed frame. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but the sound was real. It was low, guttural, something scraping wood behind the drywall, something that shouldn't have been there. I grabbed the flashlight and crept down the hallway. The dog wasn't on the floor anymore. Then I saw them, muddy paw prints. Inside, they trailed across the hardwood, waterlogged and smeared, leading away from the bedroom door, all the way to the base of the attic steps. The attic I'd locked when I moved in. I hadn't been up there once. I didn't have a key. The dog stood at the foot of the attic ladder, rigid. Her tail was tucked, body trembling, but she didn't move. Just stood there, staring at the hatch above. She didn't look at me. She didn't bark. She just stood there, guarding it. And for the first time since I found her, I realized she was afraid. I waited until morning, not because I wanted to, but because whatever sat above me in the attic had to be faced in the light of day. My hands shook as I forced a screwdriver under the lock's rusted edge and cracked it open. The hatch groaned like it hadn't been touched in years. Dust poured down in ribbons. The dog didn't follow me up. It was quiet up there. Too quiet. Even the birds outside seemed muted. The air was thick, acrid with the faint sting of old smoke and something else. Metal, maybe. Blood, maybe. I found what remained of a desk first. Warped wood, half-scorched, cluttered with things that didn't belong together. Dog collars, melted, fused into each other. Pieces of fur, glass vials sealed with wax, an iron muzzle, large enough for a wolf and bent like it had been forced open. Beneath the rubble, buried under a collapsed beam, I uncovered a wooden box. Inside were fragments of scorched pages, some in plastic sleeves, others brittle to the touch. Most were too burned to read, but I found one set still legible. They were from a veterinary research log. Handwritten. Precise. March 4th, Subject 8 did not survive the shock dose. Bone marrow collapse after transfer. Markers unstable. March 22nd, Subject 12 expired. Behavioral irregularities noted. Aggressive, but strangely aware. Reacted to old clothing. Possible memory tether. April through 1st, Subject 13 survived. No rejection signs. Vital stats consistent. Eyes changed on day 3. Does not respond to physical command but tracks movement. Resistance to death markers noted. Possible carrier. The final note was dated April 9th, just days before Martin. Lowe's death. Carrier of what? I dug deeper. Near the far corner of the attic, tucked behind old boxes and a rusted bed frame, I found a tape recorder. Old school, miraculously unburnt. There was one tape still inside. I hit play. Static. Then a voice, shaky, male, tired. If you're listening to this, I failed. The experiment worked, but I didn't. I didn't think it would keep going. The body lives on. Not just the tissue. Something else. Consciousness? Soul? I don't know. But it remembers. It knows me, and it hates me. If she comes back, don't trust her eyes. Don't let her near mirrors. The reflection doesn't always match. And whatever you do, don't go below the basement, not without the key. Click. I didn't breathe for a full minute after it ended. Then I felt it. The cold. A sudden drop in temperature that sucked the breath from my lungs. I turned around and saw nothing. But I knew I wasn't alone anymore. The dog was still at the bottom of the ladder. When I climbed down, she didn't growl, didn't move, just looked up at me like she already knew what I'd seen. The days blurred after that. Mirrors began to crack. One by one, without warning, fine fractures would appear, spiderweb patterns that crept across the surface like frostbite. I'd look into one and see myself. Then I'd blink and the reflection would tilt, move just a half-second off. But it wasn't me that was different. It was her. Sometimes I'd glance at her reflection and see something else entirely. A larger shape. Eyes that glowed amber, not brown. A jaw that hung open just a bit too wide. I stopped looking after that, but the house didn't stop. The lights flickered at odd hours. My phone wouldn't charge unless I turned it off. The dog, my only anchor, wouldn't sleep. She stayed awake, alert, always staring at me. Sometimes I'd wake up to find her at my door, just watching. Once, at 3:33 a.m. on the dot, I jolted, awake. No reason, just heart pounding like it was trying to escape my chest. She was at the foot of my bed, whimpering. That was the first time I truly feared her. Then came the fire. It was sudden, instant, a boom from below. The floor beneath my feet roared with heat. Smoke coiled up the stairwell like a living thing. Alarms screamed. I grabbed for her first. "Come on," I shouted, but she didn't need prompting. She lunged at me, teeth tugging my sleeve, dragging me toward the door. My vision blurred. Everything burned. My lungs clenched shut. I don't remember getting out. I remember collapsing in the grass, wet, shaking. I remember her beside me, panting, body covered in soot, and I remember looking back at the house and seeing flames dancing through the basement. Windows. It took the fire department 2 hours to contain it. The entire bottom floor was gutted, the walls blackened. But somehow, amid the destruction, the old floorboards beneath the staircase had split open. A trap door. The fire hadn't caused it, it had revealed it. No one else noticed. They roped off the area, said it was unsafe, but once the trucks left and the sun began to rise, I returned. The dog followed. The hatch was cold to the touch despite everything. No scorch marks, no signs of damage. I pulled it open and found a narrow shaft of stairs descending into dark, damp earth. The air smelled old, like rot and something chemical. At the bottom was a sealed crate. Steel. Riveted. A heavy padlock rusted with age, but the worst part wasn't the box itself. It was the sound. Inside, something breathed. Slow. Wet. Patient. The dog stood beside me, eyes locked on the crate. Her whole body tense. She didn't bark. She didn't growl. She just waited. Like she knew what was in there. Like she remembered. The crate was cold. So cold it felt like it had been buried in ice, not earth. My hands trembled as I forced the rusted lock open with a crowbar, muscles straining, adrenaline dulling the pain. The dog, no, Echo, stood behind me. Her ears were flat, her body low to the ground, trembling. When the crate finally groaned open, the stench hit me first. Decay. Not of something fresh, something old, preserved, desperate. Inside I saw bones, curled in the fetal position, a rib cage caved in like it had tried to collapse around itself. What skin remained was leathery, darkened, mummified by time and temperature, but what froze me in place wasn't the horror of it, it was the shape. Another dog, same breed, same size, and when I leaned in, gagging on the scent of death, I saw it, the scar. The exact same branding-like scar along the tongue, twisted into the flesh like it had been burned there. I turned to Echo. She didn't move. She didn't blink, but her tail tucked tight against her belly, and she let out the softest, saddest sound I've ever heard. I went back to the vet that same day. His receptionist said he wasn't taking appointments. I didn't care. I waited until the last patient left and cornered him by his car. "You knew," I said. "You knew what she was." He didn't even deny it. He just sighed, closed his eyes. "You opened the crate, didn't you?" I nodded. He leaned back against his trunk, rubbed his face like he hadn't slept in years. "I didn't do it," he said. "But I saw it. Years ago. Before I opened my own clinic. There was a man, a biologist, not a vet, working on memory preservation. He believed trauma was stored not just in the brain, but in cells. That you could pass it down, transfer it. Through blood, maybe. Through something else." "Lowe," I said. "The man who lived in my house." He nodded. "Martin Lowe. I met him once. He'd started working with strays, said they were perfect because they were blank slates. But I saw his notes. He wasn't just trying to preserve memory. He was trying to anchor souls." I shook my head, disbelieving even as my own memories confirmed it. The journals, the tape, the muzzle, the fire. "She won't drink water," I said. "Won't sleep, She avoids mirrors. What did he do to her? The vet's eyes welled up. He made her remember. Every time she dies, she comes back. That dog in your crate? That was her. Or the first her. Subject 13. But something went wrong. She shouldn't be alive, I said. She isn't, he whispered. Not in the way we understand it. The serum preserved her essence, maybe even her trauma, and it brought her back to the place it all started, over and over again. I didn't ask the next question. He answered anyway. She came back to finish it, to stop it, or maybe to be understood. Trauma wants one thing, to be seen. I left, without saying goodbye. That night, for the first time, Echo drank. It was quiet, just the two of us in the living room. The house was dark, but calm. I watched her approach the water bowl like it was a grave. Her tongue lapped slowly, carefully. She didn't look at me, I didn't move, but I cried, because something broke in that moment. Some wall between us that had stood for lifetimes. Whatever weight she'd carried, the fear, the pain, the memories that didn't belong in a dog's body, they started to lift. And I think she felt it too. I whispered her name, Echo, and she looked up. She knew. I laid down on the couch later, my body aching, the house finally still. She curled up beside me, not guarding, not watching, sleeping, truly sleeping. No shivers, no whimpers. Just peace. I wrote one last journal entry that night. She came back to end the cycle, and maybe I needed her to end mine. We slept, and for the first time in years, I didn't dream of fire, or loss, or Daisy's empty leash on the hook. I dreamed of running, of fields, of warmth. It's been weeks now. The house is different, lighter. I took down the mirror in the hallway, not because I was scared, because I saw something I wasn't meant to. Just once. The night after she first drank, I passed by it. Out of habit, I looked. My reflection was normal. But Echoes? She wasn't a dog. Not in the mirror. She was a little girl, maybe 6 or 7. Dark eyes. A smile so small and knowing, it chilled me. She raised her hand, just a bit, and then faded. Gone before I could blink. I don't look in mirrors anymore. Not out of fear, out of respect. Some echoes, I think, aren't meant to be silenced. They're meant to be heard, to be understood, and finally, to be free.